Watch this.
There was a lot said during the State House debate over a gender affirmation bill. A doctor who works with transgender people has something to say about that. Speaking of claims, there were a few of those tossed around about ballot drop boxes in Idaho. They are closer to being banned, contrary to what election officials have to say about it. We've all learned to work remotely during the pandemic. It's a little tougher to do for those waiting for criminal trials. Some Idahoans have been waiting nearly 2 years for their day in court, and they may have to wait even longer. There seems to be a pattern over the last couple of legislative sessions of lawmakers wanting to regulate the intimate details of Idahoans' personal lives. Things like smoking, abortion, library books, and medical treatment for transgenders. Yesterday, the House lawmakers passed House Bill 675 overwhelmingly. This bill would ban trans youth from getting medical treatments to help transition, things like hormone blockers or even surgeries, by criminalizing parents and doctors. The bill is now with the Senate, but while we wait to see what happens with it, we wanted to get some facts. A medical expert's insight on statements that were made by lawmakers during yesterday's hearing. And Katya, you were kind of looking into this today. What did you find out?
Well, Brian, I spoke to Dr. Marvin Alviso, from Family Medicine Residency of Idaho in Boise. And they have 3 transgender clinics in Idaho, 2 in Nampa and 1 in Boise. And while he couldn't speak to the other clinics, he spoke for the patients that he's been seeing. There are over 400 of them going through gender transitions as we speak. 40 of them are under the age of 18.
Somebody who comes in at 12, 13, not yet in puberty, we do nothing on these patients. We do what we call social affirmation. So if they want to change their name to more masculine, more feminine, where comfortable, they want to introduce a different form of pronoun to use. Those are the things that we support in them.
Yeah, and that's one of the first steps. He says the reason they don't do anything is because they wait until children are at the age of puberty to interview them and start the blockers. But Representative Skog, author of the bill we heard yesterday, says otherwise.
Children as young as 11, 12, 13 are getting puberty blockers, which are inserted surgically.
They're not inserted surgically, it's an injection. There is a medical condition called central precocious puberty. So it exists in medical science. So I myself, I have a niece who has central precocious puberty. So they start puberty at the age of 7 or 8. So they're very young, they start menstruating, they have like chest development already. So your goal is to stop this puberty until like they're old enough. So you're just pausing puberty.
After about 4 months, they are usually sterilized for life. That's a permanent decision.
We are not sterilizing them. So we're just putting a pause on their puberty so that when they're old enough to undergo puberty, once we stop the medication, their puberty ensues in like 3 to 4 months. So it's the same concept that we're using in children who are transgender or gender diverse. We're putting a pause in their puberty until they're old enough to kind of know like more like now that they experience it, they don't have to undergo this painful puberty that they do not want to begin with, then that decreases like their gender dysphoria, they become more functional, and I think that's one less thing for them to worry.
And he says of his 40 youth transgender patients, 14 of them are currently on puberty blockers. Once a child has been on puberty blockers for about 2 years, by 16 years old, that's when crossed sex hormones or hormone treatments are introduced. And from that point on, the patient is monitored every 3 or 6 months to make sure they are not having any negative side effects. He says it's important to start hormone treatment at that age for a number of reasons.
By the time you're 17 or 18, like you have the features already that you don't want. So we're trying to avoid like for them for people who's transitioning female, we're trying to avoid for them to have that masculine features, which will be very hard to stop once it's in there already. We know that these medications with counseling, with medication, that these will help alleviate the very tumultuous like puberty that children already undergo. So imagine if you're a transgender undergoing puberty and then with this like gender dysphoria as well, it's too much. And then the least we can do would be like help them thrive in a better environment so they can proceed as normal, as much as normality that they can. This is a very this is a very dear topic for me because I've been doing this one for the past 7 years, and I've seen improvement in all facets of life of these patients. And stopping this puberty, like, you are driving these patients to commit suicide.
Yeah, so it's tough to hear. And Brian, we heard a lot yesterday about procreation, right? And what does this do to fertility? Well, according to him, he says before any treatment starts, patients are asked if they want to save or freeze their sperm or egg cells for future fertility use. He says even in his 7 years of doing this, he's only had one patient regret their decision to go through this transition process.
Adolescence, puberty, already a confusing enough time for a lot of people. But we heard, like what Bree said to you yesterday, how old were you when you knew you were a woman? I mean, some people pretty much figure this out pretty early on.
Yeah, and I asked the doctor today, he says 4 years old.
Wow.
When we figure out, what we are.
Yeah, some people it takes a little longer, but still, some people not so much. All right, thanks. With all that being said, Katya, this is what was said about House Bill 675, seeing the light of day on the Senate side.
Well, I don't think you'll see any, some of the craziness that the House seems to like to do get very far in the Senate.
Some of the craziness Senate Pro Tem Chuck Winder is referring to would likely include the transgender bill we just spoke about. On a Zoom meeting with legislative leaders and local reporters today, Senator Winder was asked about several bills that were sent over from the House, specifically House Bills 675 and 666, the one that could criminalize librarians should harmful materials get into the hands of kids. Winder said he assigned both bills to the Senate State Affairs Committee, and he already has some thoughts on the transgender affirmation bill.
I don't think there's significant drumbeat for it. I think there'll be some that will want to see it happen for whatever their reason might be. If I were a betting person, I would give it pretty low odds of advancing.
Then there was this on the librarians as lawbreakers bill, number 666.
I do not see the chamber picking this one up. I don't see it getting a hearing in committee. I think it's very appropriately numbered 666. If you understand the symbolism of the number, I think it's mischief and something that doesn't need to happen.
Winder went on to say the Senate has a tendency to ask a lot of questions, and a lot of time the bill's sponsor doesn't have a lot of answers. He said he assigned those bills to State Affairs for good reason. And apparently, there's a drawer where bills like this and these are put in by committee chairs. While Winder said he doesn't advise what gets put in those drawers, once they are there, though, they tend to stay there and not go any farther. It appears to be a pretty big drawer also on the Senate side, with little time left to open them back up. Legislative leadership has made it clear they hope to adjourn by the end of the month. Earlier this week, House sent House Bill 693 over to the Senate, the bill that wants to ban absentee ballot drop boxes around the state of Idaho. The bill barely passed, though, 37 to 33. But there were a lot of things said during debate and advancement of this bill that left a lot of people wondering about its intent. It was explained this way by the bill's sponsor, Representative Priscilla Giddings, during its State Affairs Committee hearing on March 2nd.
This legislation identifies that I think that there's a higher benefit to not having these because of potentials with fraud or some unforeseen circumstance that could contaminate ballots in a location where there's not somebody there to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Election integrity has been a big talking point during the last couple of years, even with politicians here in Idaho, despite no evidence being brought forward of any sort of election fraud during the last presidential election cycle. And that included unsupported claims about drop boxes. Drop boxes which were used by every county in Idaho during the 2020 primary, and a vast majority of them for the general election that November. In fact, there are 43 drop boxes being used in 32 of Idaho's 44 counties right now, including 3 of them, one in each of the counties in Representative Giddings' district. A lot of them use federal COVID cash to buy newer, more secure drop boxes, by the way. All of them are located either just outside a county courthouse or city hall or even inside. And all but 4, as you see here marked by the green check mark there, all but 4 of them have a 24-hour video security camera pointed right at them. Contrary to what Giddings claimed about the possibility of contaminated ballots where there's not somebody there to make sure that doesn't happen. How do we know this? Well, this information isn't kept with the Secretary of State's office. We asked. But this information was compiled by the Bingham County clerk. who has monthly conference calls with all 44 county clerks who are in charge of elections. She also told us they're part of an email group. County clerks end up talking several times a week, so they do communicate. So when Bingham County Clerk Pam Eckhart heard what was said during the State Affairs Committee hearing on March 2nd, that got her thinking, and then it got her on her phone.
Representative Giddings, do you know how many clerks actually have drop boxes in the state?
The very first question asked the Representative Giddings was, how many counties use a drop box? And she was unsure.
I actually do not have a complete list. Every county does it differently. I think there's about 8 to 10 counties.
And I knew that was incorrect.
It is interesting that Representative Giddings said she doesn't know, maybe 8 or 10. There are 3 drop boxes alone in her district.
And I don't know that she talked to a county clerk in her district, but when we talked as county clerks, no one had been contacted to ask that question. An aide could have easily gotten that information from all 44 counties in 2 hours. And as she continued on and said, well, we just want to protect for future fraud or contamination. I just thought no one has asked the county clerks, who we are on the front lines. We are all for safe and secure elections. That's our job. We would be the first ones to say, ooh, we don't think drop boxes are a good idea. But we're seeing the positive side of drop boxes.
Mostly, Eckhart says, drop boxes are about convenience, a better way people can make sure their vote actually gets counted. The mail service now in eastern Idaho, it takes a little bit longer. Why is that?
You can drop it off in our Blackfoot post office or on any of the mail routes, but it all goes to Salt Lake now to be sorted and then has to come back. And it can take up to 2 weeks sometimes for letters. It just depends.
I think one of the other concerns was just somebody just coming up and taking the drop box or the envelopes inside, breaking into it.
Well, they could, but they could do that at a U.S. postal box also. It's just another way to help people facilitate the ability to vote in a safe and secure way.
Nobody from Representative Giddings' office called county clerks to ask how many are using drop boxes or why. We reached out to ask her about this, but she has yet to return our email or phone call. If she had, she might have learned from those county clerks. They were against this bill from the beginning, deeming it unnecessary. As for the contention of unforeseen circumstances of contaminated ballots, that just hasn't happened, Eckhart told us. We've learned the same from Ada County, where there are 6 of these drop boxes. Eckhart told us even if someone wanted to drop off 20 or even 100 fraudulent absentee ballots, they'd be tossed out during the verification process because you place your absentee ballot into a secrecy sleeve so that no one can see you voted for. Then you put both into a postage-paid ballot return envelope. It's all easily explained very simply on the state's voter website.
In Idaho, your return envelope will have your name and a signature line on the outside. This, along with the barcode, helps those checking in your ballot to quickly pull up your voter record and efficiently verify your signature while changing your outstanding ballot status. This step ensures that only one ballot is issued to or returned by any one voter.
There's a lot of videos of that website if you want to check them out. Once your ballot is accepted and separated from that outer envelope, the ballot itself becomes anonymous to guarantee the privacy of your vote. All of this is closely monitored through each stage. Your ballot is then stored according to approved security plans, and that place is never accessed by fewer than 2 people. The separated outer envelopes, those are kept in case there's a need for an audit and to update voter history. Finally, during debate on this bill on the House floor, Representative Giddings quoted Idaho code to say absentee ballots had to be mailed or delivered to the election officer who sent it to you. But because some in Bingham County mailed theirs in 2020, and it had to go through Salt Lake City before being delivered to the election officer, we were told by Eckhart today there were 10 ballots that missed the deadline and were not counted.
check. Check, check. Thank you. I can hear you. Oh, I'm at the...
I feel a little bit like Charlie Brown ready to try to kick a field goal. I'm just hopeful that Lucy doesn't pull the ball on me again, right?
Classic. Well, probably a lot of people out there with the same thought. For the last 2 years, COVID has certainly pulled the ball out on a lot of things. Idaho courts, no exception. They've battled through complicated COVID protocols and processes. A reality for courts, they can't really operate the way they need to remotely. So for the last 2 years or so, work has piled up. How much is out there to do, though, right now? And are courts really bogged down for the long term? Joe Parrish checked in with the Ada County Courthouse administrators about the work on their plate and how long they will take to get through it.
As courthouses across Idaho get back to business, the COVID-created backlog remains a major challenge.
It is still fairly daunting.
Judge Stephen Hippler is the administrative district judge for the 4th District Court in Ada County. Judge Hippler and his colleagues are working to catch up on cases that saw delay after delay because of COVID. A major focus point now, getting in-custody defendants before a jury trial.
We are probably backlogged by about 350 to 500 trials would be my guess. In terms of, we haven't tried any civil cases since, early 2020, like January, February 2020. So we're a couple years behind on civil trials. And that will be a significant component of trying to catch up.
So how long could it take in Ada County to fully catch up and get back to quote unquote normal? It's impossible to say for sure, but Judge Hippler has this insight.
Before we get through the full effects of the pandemic, get everything sort of back to operating at a normal level, I think we're talking about 2024, 2025, maybe even. I mean, I think it's just going to take that long to get back to a normal start that allows also a little bit of perhaps another stop here or there in that time frame.
The stop and start reality of COVID has made the situation challenging.
I feel a little bit like Charlie Brown ready to try to kick a field goal. I'm just hopeful that Lucy doesn't pull the ball on me again, right? So I've been here before, optimistic, and then something else happens, another shoe drops, and we're back having to shut down again.
Navigating everything through COVID has been a challenge that comes with natural frustration at times. Courts were not originally set up to handle business through a pandemic. Because of that, people on all sides of court proceedings have had to be patient and wait.
We have to weigh all those things and decide how we're going to carry forward, what tools we're going to carry forward, and which we're going to recognize, yes, that might have been efficient, but it's important that these certain proceedings go back to in person.
At the Ada County Courthouse, Judge Hippler says there's been great efforts to embrace technology and creativity to keep as many court proceedings going as possible. Things like court appearances via Zoom have made access easier. At the same time, though, some non-traditional court proceedings have come with the sacrifice of standard process and procedure that is vital to proceedings.
I think that's a little bit of a frustration that we're not able to afford defendants that important right to go to trial quickly. I think one of the other frustrations has been the start and stop nature of things. So in a given case, the state has to reach out to witnesses and subpoena them and make them available for a given week, and then they're not able to go.
All right, Joe, so given this time constraint, are people looking to make some plea deals instead of going to trial?
You would imagine that if there was a jury team, or excuse me, I should say a legal team that has the potential of going into a jury trial, a lot of them have been talking about, okay, is there a way that we can, I guess, make a deal before we actually go all the way to court and get to a jury trial? Now, some cases, that's exactly what you have to do. You have to escalate it to that point. But another thing I was talking about with Judge Hippler, Brian, is that Judge Hippler and a lot of his colleagues for free have been willing to mediate some certain cases, saying that, hey, if you could come in and we can mediate this situation, civil matters, I should say, that there they're able to say, okay, this is solved. This is what a fair deal would be. If both sides agree to it, we can wrap this up and we don't have to come back to court. There's been, of course, a lot of people that have been waiting and waiting for court dates. And if you're one of those people waiting, you'll start to find out some more information now, because Ada County really hoping to get starting to roll again. But Brian, as you heard Judge Hippler, every time they get rolling in the last 2 years, something comes up.
Yep, mask, no mask, it all kind of piles up. And yeah, it looks like we all have a lot of catching up to do. All right, thanks, Joe. All right, final moments of the show. Let's get to your text messages you sent in, like this one. Brian, please stop airing the clips from Idaho legislators pushing their bogus bills with bogus support info. It is embarrassing. It's all about keeping you informed, my dear. That's our job here. GOP needs to stop promoting themselves as the limited small government party. Fallacy. That train has done left the station, says Martin in Boise. Ask a county clerk and you get the facts, not the fear-mongering. Didn't think about that, says Jim in Boise, which is kind of what we like to do. We kind of want to see where these go to the source, go to the front lines. As County Clerk Pam Eckhart said today, we know what's going on in our counties. Bureaucrats may get a bad rap, but good on the county clerks for standing up against the bill that would ban ballot boxes, drop boxes across the state of Idaho. This one from the 541 into the 208. Oregon has voted by mail for a long time, and we have not had any trouble with our vote. I've used the drop box for the last 10 years that I have lived in Oregon. It is very, very convenient. That's a good point. Oregon has the mail-in ballots all the time. Leftist Brian, why do you need to report the truth all the time? Asks Eric. Well, it turns out the truth has no affiliation, which is good because we look for it everywhere, no matter what side it comes from. Thanks for watching. We'll try to do it again tomorrow.